This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Today's episode of the Motor City Sports Rant is brought to you by The Athletic, premium coverage for passionate Detroit sports fans. Listeners of this podcast can save 30% off the first year of an annual subscription by going to theathletic.com/DSP. All the hosts here on the network reread the in-depth features, the great Detroit sports coverage at The Athletic. They got great writers, and they got writers covering all major Detroit sports. And even recently, they've hired staff to cover Michigan and Michigan State football. You're not going to miss out. So go visit theathletic.com/DSP, become a subscriber, and even save 30% off. Theathletic.com/DSP.
Detroit is the greatest! Straight up light you on fire for a Coney dog right now.
Takes, throws, end zone, Calvin, touchdown, Detroit Lions!
Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for downloading another episode of the Motor City Sports Rant. Today, it's just the DOC all by himself. Look, Jason is a guy that's doing great things outside of the podcast network, and all credit to him for taking on a bunch of new challenges. But unfortunately, this week, he could not record, so he let me know well in advance. So don't worry, we have a great show lined up for everybody that tunes in. The Doc found his way to the Motor City Casino, scratching that itch. At heart, I was somebody that liked to play No Limit Hold'em. When the whole poker boom started back in 2003 with Chris Moneymaker, I definitely was a guy that got really into it. I watched all the poker on ESPN, read all the books, and I really got into it. Then when you get into your career and you have a family, you start getting distracted. You no longer have time to throw down and get down to the casino and play cards. Had an opportunity to go with my brother-in-law to Connecticut maybe 11 years ago. I played at, it was Foxwoods. I played in a $500 buy-in. It was a limit tournament. And for me, limit games are a little bit more my lane, a little bit better for me to go down that road instead of no limit tournaments where swings can take place if you play cards. And I got an opportunity to play with professionals and cashed a couple times out in California and out there at Foxwoods. Made the brother-in-law drive 11 hours due to the Doc's kind of concerns and anxieties regarding flying. So with me, I've played a lot of poker hands at casinos. Everyone remembers when they would get together with their buddies. Sometimes some people would get together, maybe 20, 30 people, throw down 30 to 50 bucks and have tournaments. And I would have some success. And I would say at this point in time, I'm a winning player. I've definitely won more than I've lost, but it's just something where you start a podcast, you have a career, and you just kind of fall away from playing in tournaments. You just don't have time. A lot of people kind of also just really never got that good. And when you continuously lose money and you're not that good at something, it made it harder to find people to actually play. But since there's 3 casinos downtown, the poker action, the poker scene in Metro Detroit is amazing, as evidenced by 2 top 10 finishers from the state of Michigan who actually cashed for well over 7 figures in Joe Cata and Nick Mannion. We are efforting Nick Mannion. Hopefully this week will show up on one of the shows on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. But in that vein, I was able to watch in the last couple of weeks a lot of hours of the 2018 World Series of Poker. And what they decided to do was they decided that, you know what, instead of taping all the coverage and airing it 30 to 60 days after the event had ended, they decided to roll with airing it as the tournament was progressing. And wow, how fun was it to go through from day one of the tournament all the way up until the 12-hour epic heads-up match. And it was something to be seen. So I got the itch, and so I made my way down to Motor City Casino, and I had myself a good time. Played 1-2, and I know some of you will say, playing 1-2 no limit. Oh, you got to step up, play 2-5, buy in for 500 to 800, and you'll do a much better job. You'll avoid some of the fish. Well, I talked to my buddy, and he said, oh, John, to be honest with you, you're going to find the fish all over the place. I'm like, really? There's still that many fish? And he's like, yeah, he's like, if you play tight, you develop that table image of being a guy that doesn't play a lot of hands, and you still open the pot for $35, you're still likely to get 3 or 4 callers. I'm like, whoa, yeah, I better kind of grow a pair and maybe delve into 2-5 no limit. But for me, my comfort zone is buying in maximum $200, 1-2 no limit, splash around, and see some hands. Look, I understand that people are going to play hands that are really trash if you know poker, like, 3-8, not suited. You understand that, but when you play cards, you recognize, okay, there's going to be certain things that people do that indicates they have strength, and they're going to bet. So for me, I play patient. I wait for good cards, and if you are familiar with the game of poker, I play positionally strong. I don't play a lot of hands out of position. I play hands when you're closer to the button, and you have opportunities to act last, and that's how you show. That's where you get most of the information when your opponent either checks or bets into you. You get a lot of information when you're acting last as opposed to acting first. So I was lucky enough to pick up basically 3 or 4 hands, kings a couple times, and I made a set of 9s, and it was great, had a good time. Playing at Motor City was comfortable for me. I really enjoyed it, had an opportunity to kind of watch poker, spend 2 or 3 hours on a Saturday at the casino. It's really interesting in terms of the level of play at the casino, at the 1-2 level. Hasn't changed much. If you've gone down to the casino lately, you realize the same fish are going to drop down, and they're going to show up with their money. Some people even play under the influence of something, and you realize, wow, I stepped away. It's been like maybe two years since I played really a hand at a casino, and you walk back in, and you're like, really? Everyone's still doing the same things. You still have that old guy that's really tight with his chips. You got that young whippersnapper that wants to play every hand aggressively. And, you got that foreign guy who just comes in with $1,000 and is willing to reload 200 at a time and is betting $15 every hand. And you're like, wow, not much in the poker world has changed. And I'm like, okay. And you get comfortable. And I think for me, being a psychologist, being that I'm a people person, I can wait a couple orbits, a couple rounds around the table without playing a hand, just seeing what people are doing, and saw some big hands. I mean, I saw aces, kings. I saw people making moves, making bluffs, and it was fun. It was fun. Somebody tried to bluff me on the river because there were hearts on the board, 3 hearts. It was a situation in which I made 3 of a kind on the turn, and I didn't put somebody as flopping a flush. I didn't believe. And so when he raised me on the river, I thought about it maybe for 5-10 seconds, and I called him. I called an $80 raise with 3 9s, and luckily he made 2 pair. So I could have maybe moved all in. I could have been a little bit more aggressive. That's the biggest weakness in my game, is that I'm really passive. I'm more into checking and calling. I'm more into just playing premium hands, and I'm one of those guys like a Sammy Farha who, if you make a big bluff, you're likely to get me to think about what you have. But, sometimes in anything, you either believe somebody has it or you don't. And it's what makes poker fun, is you really don't see what the person's doing. So those that say, oh, it's an easy game, and you are critical of people's hands and things like that, it is hard when you don't know what someone has. That's the beauty of the game, is you don't know what your opponent has. But for me, that's the game that I love playing at the casino, man. It's really fun. You can play against other players. You see a wide range of personalities. You have an opportunity to see those that are just donking off their chips. I mean, literally, somebody walked into the casino, walked up to our table and was like, "Well, I'm here to burn through some chips." So I said to myself, "Oh man, let me pick up a couple hands. Let me just get an opportunity to double up and start really playing well." Because if you have $400 or $500 at a 1-2 no limit table, oh, you can dictate by opening up for ridiculous amounts and getting some money in the pot. But all in all, it was a great fun experience going down to Motor City this last weekend. Now, a quick observation. Something that is new to me, being that I'm a 39-year-old, I'm a professional, and I'm somebody that's not used to just going down to the casino all that often. But the last 4 or 5 times that I've gone down there, usually I go down to Motor City. The last 4 or 5 times that I've gone, I've seen a trend that's unusual to me, but one that I find funny. Obviously, everybody knows most people smoke reefer. They get high in parking lots, because every time I go down to the casino, especially at Motor City, people are, I'm basically getting a contact high. Everyone's smoking in their car before they enter the casino, having a good old time. But something that I've seen that's really funny is people like to party in the Motor City parking lot, and it is a phenomenon that's new to me. Something that I'm not used to is that you roll up at 10:30, you're looking like this, you have a collared shirt on, you're dressed nice, you want to go and play poker and have a good time, and you walk up to the casino, you find your parking spot, you look around, it's busy, and you make your way, let's say you're in section 1G or 1F, and you're far away, you got a little bit of a trek to get to the entrance, and if you walk through, there's people blasting music, mostly females, young, having a good time, playing music, and Snapchatting. And I find it very interesting because, you know what, in a couple of these times, I really wanted to jump in and dance and get all up in the Snapchat. So it was funny in that people are really willing to have a good time at the Motor City Casino parking lot. Is that something? Is that a trend? Is that something I'm oblivious to? Something that's been going on that I'm not aware of, being that I'm a little bit sheltered and a little bit conservative, but it was fun. I mean, people are dancing, blaring, blasting this music. And could you imagine me, a middle-aged guy, walking into the casino, seeing these young ladies dancing and partying and Snapchatting, and then me walks by. And you know what? As long as you put a smile on your face and you hear the music, it's fun. And I just find it funny in that, why would you choose the Motor City Casino parking lot to club and dance and hear this kind of music? So it's interesting, but you know what? Why not? Can't beat them, join them, right? I really wanted to get up in their videos. But then, you're like, well, I don't want to get, me having security called on me. But it was fun. I just like, people are having a good time. They want to dance. They want to sing. They want to, express themselves. But why in the Motor City Casino parking lot? That's the one thing that I don't understand is why would you choose to express yourself there? Go into the casino and do it. Have a good time inside. It's air conditioned. It's nice. Why do you want to party in the parking lot? I don't get it. Maybe by then you've already had your drinks and you're going home. At the same time, it's fun. It's an interesting 5-minute walk from the parking lot into the casino. If you have a chance, like I said, for poker, maybe some people play at MGM or Greektown. For me, my comfort zone is at Motor City Casino, and I had a good time with it. So, but for those of you that are partying in the Motor City Casino parking lot, God bless you. It's fun. I see you, and the reefer, my goodness. All right, I want to take a time out. In the second half of the podcast, I want to delve into Chauncey Billups and whether or not, if he were to become a general manager of a basketball team, would he be somebody that could have success? Could he be like a Joe Dumars, an individual that had success on the court, and then could he go off the court and build a team in his likeness, and could he have success similar to Joe Dumars? And then I want to talk about something in regards to Detroit. To end the podcast, it's unfortunate in that Detroit has made concerted efforts to try and improve the infrastructure. The sporting landscape is really solid. I mean, literally, you got 3 arenas within 2 blocks of each other. And the Detroit Sports Commission has been actively working to try and bring big events to the Motor City, but it just hasn't been successful. The latest efforts to try and bring an event did not come to fruition, and it wasn't successful. And I want to delve into that in the second half of this podcast. You're listening to the Motor City Sports Rant on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Let me tell everybody about our host site, Podomatic.com. When Adam and I first started this project, we were looking for a great place to host all of our recorded audio. And thank goodness we found Podomatic. Why do we use them? Since September of 2013, we've recorded over 1,000 podcasts on this platform. We've only used one host site, Podomatic.com. We have great fun, great laughs, great debates. Adam and I have verbal warfare every single Thursday. We record podcasts almost every single day. And we take that great recorded audio and we upload it quickly to Podomatic so that all of our supporters across the United States and even overseas can find it. Imagine if we invite big guests on and we can't get them a link for them to share with their supporters. You would never be able to grow the network at the level that we've been able to. So if you're looking to start a brand new podcast, if you're looking to start a brand new project, Doc and Jock, Vito, Shay, Jason, Jerry, Steve, we're all going to recommend one host site and one host site alone, Podomatic.com. I wonder if anyone tuned in to the Big Three. I know it was aired on Fox Sports 1. You know, Chauncey was making the rounds in the media. He was talking to everybody in regards to kind of the past situations in terms of being traded from the Pistons for Allen Iverson, kind of recapping the time in which the Detroit Pistons were having success, winning an NBA title back in 2004, appearing in 6 consecutive Eastern Conference Finals, but Joe D ended up realizing that the landscape in the Eastern Conference was changing, and he pulled the trigger, and he broke apart that team. And it's unfortunate that they maybe didn't win a little bit more, getting all those opportunities in the postseason. But unfortunately, the landscape changed. LeBron started to emerge, and the rest was history. The Pistons era at that time needed to be ended. Unfortunately, Joe Dumars' second go-round at trying to construct a team was not as successful in terms of drafting, having money in free agency. He just unfortunately went out and spent bad money, bad contracts, bad moves, and that's why the Pistons struggle to this day. And Chauncey was able to kind of recap his love for the Pistons, and he always talks about his work at ESPN, the successes that he's having on and off the court, and inevitably, people want to know about Chauncey Billups and what he wants to do in the future. And it's quite obvious now, if you've heard any of the interviews with Chauncey Billups, it's quite obvious. The man wants to work as a general manager. He wants to work his way up and potentially run a franchise. Is there a franchise out there that's willing to give him an opportunity right off the bat, maybe the first-time job to be a general manager? I'm not sure in this landscape, especially with what's going on around the NBA, that a team is just going to give him an opportunity right off the bat. But I do think that eventually Chauncey Billups is going to run a team. Chauncey Billups deserves an opportunity to be a general manager of an NBA franchise. I mean, who better than an individual who was part of several organizations, was an individual whose talent kind of lended himself early on to be dealt. He was somebody that was overlooked, and many organizations did not believe in Chauncey Billups. And then finally, Joe Dumars was the general manager who finally took a chance on Chauncey and recognized this is an individual who could be a natural leader. He could be somebody that could take the big shots, and then eventually Chauncey earned the nickname Mr. Big Shot, and he was the catalyst for the Detroit Pistons to make that run in the 2000s. Chauncey Billups is somebody that does have an eye for talent. He does understand what a team looks like that needs to be built. I mean, he's seen it. He's seen the Pistons go out and acquire Ben Wallace, having Rip Hamilton on the team, making that final piece, that final move, a la a Rasheed Wallace. He understands that you need to have proper coaching. The Pistons went out and finally cemented themselves by going out and getting a legendary coach in Larry Brown. And so he's seen the framework of what it takes in order to build a team. And he's also seen mistakes at the highest level. I mean, he's seen probably the process a little bit in terms of what the Pistons were going through in terms of drafting Darko. And there are opportunities for him to potentially learn from those mistakes, realizing that drafting is supremely key. You have to have quality scouts. You have to have an organizational structure in place, utilizing analytics in 2018, also utilizing really advanced foreign scouting and really utilizing scouts in college to recognize, especially if the one and done rule ends and you have opportunities maybe to take kids more and more right out of high school. So it's not an easy task. It's not as easy as we all would think. But the question is for everybody, and I'll ask everybody that's listening, do you think Chauncey Billups could be successful as a general manager? My answer is yes. I think he has the talent. I think that he has to work his way up by maybe being an assistant coach, by being an assistant general manager, by seeing what it's like to work in a day-to-day system, because it's not just picking talent and evaluating. It's also, when you're the general manager, picking the right coach, making sure that your young stars, if you start to develop them, are really believing and in line with your head coach. Because if you splinter an organization, if you have supremely young talent and you're drafting and you're having some seasons where you struggle and you're drafting higher and higher and you're drafting 18, 19, 20-year-olds year after year for 3 to 4 years, and you bring in that old coach and it's not a fit, you start to alienate your young talent, and what do they end up doing? They end up talking to each other, texting each other, DMing each other in the Instagram, and they end up wanting to meet up and go somewhere else. And that's something you can't afford to do as a general manager, is to hire bad head coaches and have bad drafts. You just cannot have that happen. Now, the other side of the coin is, do you think the Pistons made a mistake in terms of not reaching out to Chauncey Billups and actually making an offer and making a deal for Chauncey to become the general manager of the Pistons? Are you sitting there and are you saying to yourself, man, the Pistons now being led by Ed Stefanski, what does he really know about bringing a championship team together and winning at the highest level? Whereas a guy like Chauncey Billups has been in it, been in the trenches, has been around a quality, legendary head coach, has seen a team built without a real quote-unquote superstar. A guy like Chauncey Billups I think would have been an interesting hire at this point in time for the Detroit Pistons. He could have come in, evaluated the landscape, maybe even gotten a little bit more out of Reggie Jackson, maybe gotten a little bit more out of Stanley Johnson. Maybe he even makes the same hire and brings in Dwayne Casey. Maybe he has somebody else in line that's the next up-and-coming legendary coach. Do you think the Pistons made a mistake in not bringing in Chauncey Billups? That'll be an interesting question, especially if he does land a job anywhere in the NBA. Would he come back to haunt the Detroit Pistons as they're now at the forefront of a rebuild? That's the question everybody's going to be asking. Everybody's going to be wondering, can Chauncey Billups get a job right now, right out of the gate? Because that's what he's going to be looking for. He's going to be looking for an opportunity to run an NBA franchise, and maybe he doesn't think that he has to go the way of being under somebody for a period of time. Why do I think Chauncey Billups will be successful? I've said it earlier. I think that he has an eye for talent. I think as a guy who was a little bit underrated prior to him joining the Pistons, he'll understand what it takes for a player to have heart. He'll understand the intangibles that a player needs to have success at the highest level. I think he will be player friendly. He'll understand that you can build a team a number of ways. He's seen now, sitting there in the ESPN booth, he's seen opportunities for super teams to be built. He's had the opportunity to see how the Golden State Warriors struggled for a period of time and then went out and actually effectively drafted quality players. And especially right now, the way the NBA is going, I'm sure Chauncey realizes that you got to have shooters. And who better than Mr. Big Shot to go out there and evaluate who can actually make shots? Chauncey Billups, the man who had shot after shot and who was clutch. A man, in his day, I'd want the ball in his hands late. You knew, give it to Chauncey Billups, as opposed to now, when you give the ball to Reggie Jackson, we're all like gritting our teeth and we're going, no. Reggie Jackson gets the ball. It's not a good proposition for anybody listening. You know you don't want the ball in Reggie Jackson's hand late in games. Chauncey, I do believe, will have an eye for talent. He'll understand how to construct a team, and I'd be fascinated to see what kind of team Chauncey puts together. I do believe the Pistons missed out on an opportunity to have Chauncey in the fold, and he said it himself. He definitely wants a job. He probably was a little disappointed, but at the same time, there are maybe jobs out there that are maybe a little bit better than the Pistons in their current incarnation, and maybe in 3 to 4 years. And maybe if he takes a team and he gets a job and he takes a team that's constantly in the 9th to 12th seed and gets them over the hump, maybe then the Pistons can be the final spot, the final destination for Chauncey Billups. Just unfortunate because you do sense with the Red Wings and the Pistons, the biggest word that people are using these days is stale. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that that's the word that we have to associate with the organizations that we're all passionate about, stale. And I do believe Chauncey Billups would have provided that spark that everybody would have been excited about. But the other side, those that are detractors will say, you remember a former player who had success in a different sport, a la football, who came from the booth calling games, a la Matt Millen. So it doesn't guarantee success that Chauncey Billups could get into management and become successful right away. But I do think, especially where the Pistons are at, in terms of not having any buzz, in terms of not really having the best talent that can compete for a title, having a splintered fan base who isn't really believing, not going down to LCA because they know the Pistons haven't been winners and haven't been real contenders in a decade, that bringing in a Chauncey Billups at least would have been that spark, that would have been that first sign of belief, that sign of hope that maybe the Pistons are on the right path. But Chauncey, wherever he lands, I do think the doc cosigns that he'll have success. If I'm wrong, message me at Detroit Podcast. Let me know. We read all the tweets. We read everything, good or bad, criticisms. If you think my takes are terrible, if you think me, Vito, Adam, we don't know what we're doing, feel free. Message us at Detroit Podcast. We definitely love and we read all the tweets, and thank you for making us one of the players in the Detroit sports scene. Finally, I want to get to this because it's disappointing. It wasn't on the agenda for today, but earlier on Monday, it was revealed that the NCAA, who were hearing bids all across the country, the Detroit Sports Commission were definitely part of that. They put together a solid bid over the course of a year. They even went to Boston to make a case for why Detroit needs to have the opportunity to host the Final Four. And earlier on Monday, it was revealed the host sites for the years 2023 to 2026. Was Detroit on it? No. And that's really disappointing in that, Detroit has made efforts now to attract the MLS to the city. They've made efforts to try and bring the Final Four to the city. And while it's been great to have early rounds in the NCAA at Little Caesars Arena, the big marquee events have yet to kind of come back consistently. And it kind of also starts with wrestling. I mean, you would have thought maybe in the last 10 years, you would have brought back a WrestleMania. You would have brought back a big major wrestling event to the likes of a Little Caesars or Ford Field. You would have thought that another Super Bowl would be in the works. No, it hasn't happened. But when the news broke that Ford Field will not be getting a Final Four, it kind of leaves you scratching your head going, why? Why is it that Detroit, at this point in time, has not been able to secure these bids? And people are wondering at the same time, what kind of information is being passed along in these bids? What is the holdup? Why didn't the MLS like the Detroit bid? Well, obviously, in terms of the MLS, it had to do with the stadium. I just find it difficult to believe that the MLS is going to want to work with Ford Field. They're making a case that a retractable roof at Ford Field will be beneficial, will be a marquee destination. It's a hub. Ford Field is in a great location. They're making their case for why an MLS stadium should be indoors and in a stadium shared with a football team, whereas the MLS has made it specifically clear we want an all-purposeful soccer stadium that can be built really specifically for the MLS, and it hasn't happened. And then you heard Ford Field went renovations, a lot of money pumped in to make it technologically advanced, and they're making bids to attract the Final Four. The Final Four experience back in 2009 was great. I feel like going to see Michigan State defeating Connecticut was an awesome experience, one that I'll never forget. The sightlines weren't the best as opposed to where I was sitting. I understand that playing basketball in a football stadium, the depth, I mean, the court is basically in the middle of the football field, and there really aren't that many great close seats that I could afford at the time. But still, being in the environment when Michigan State advanced out of the Final Four was amazing in the national semifinal to get to the final game. Now, they didn't close the deal. They lost to North Carolina basically at home, but it was a great experience. And now you look to today and you go, why? Well, people have messaged us because I asked and I thought about it. And as always, I always want the input from the people. And I asked, I said, what's going on? Why isn't Detroit in the mix? What's going on? Why are big organizations passing like the NCAA? Well, one of the big things that people complain about is there's not enough hotels, not enough space to fit the national audience, the national media, fans from the Final Four teams. There's not enough quality hotels. Now, there are great hotels, but there's not enough of them. The other big thing, public transportation. None of you are riding the Q line. Most of you did when it was free. I didn't. I've never tested it out. I do get annoyed driving downtown and you got to wait because there's cars in the path of the Q line and you're looking and you're like, really? Is this how it was built? And people are like, you know what? In terms of wait times, in this day and age, it's really surprising to me that you wouldn't, try to make it a little bit faster, whereas people are waiting and waiting and waiting, and they've shared experiences via numerous social media sites that say, look, you can walk 4 blocks pretty much faster than it takes to use the Q line. And that's a disaster. You can't have that. And you go, what's going on with Detroit? What's going on with their bids? You don't have quality mass transportation. Public transportation's key, obviously, when you have these big marquee events. It looks like you don't have enough hotel space, and you're still battling that age-old perception of the city of Detroit. And it's really gross at this point in time to talk about it. Detroit, nationally, is yet to really distinguish itself like a city like Indy, Houston, New Orleans. Indianapolis is getting multiple big events all the time. It doesn't seem like the metropolitan area of Detroit is garnering enough national respect. Have you been down there? Am I wrong? I'm down there for the sporting events. I've covered a lot of things at Little Caesars Arena, at Ford Field. I'm comfortable. I know my way around the downtown sporting landscape right there off of the Lodge and 75 South. I know the area, so I'm okay. But do I venture anywhere past it? Do I ever go past Grand River? Not really. I'm, right from the arenas, right back on the highway. So I don't know my way around. I'm not into the bars. I don't go and walk around from the stadiums to the bars. Am I wrong? Is it terrible? Is it scary at night? Do you feel uncomfortable? I will say this. Obviously, I went to a couple wrestling events, being that I'm the host of a wrestling podcast, a very popular wrestling podcast. And so I did attend a couple events at Little Caesars, and I did not want to pay the $20 for parking, and I did not secure free parking from the various sources that I have. Yes, the DOC has sources to get stuff for free. And so I made the trek. I recognized the plan and asked people, I said, okay, when you go to Little Caesars Arena, what do you do? and I parked at MGM and walked, going there in the middle of the day because I got there early to the arena to Little Caesars for I think it was Hell in a Cell last October. So walking in the daytime, no problem. Now walking at night, obviously, in terms of people's concerns, my wife was concerned. She said, let's walk in a crowd. And that's what we did. Did we feel comfortable? I mean, it's a little bit uncomfortable all the time when you see the people that are having the signs right near the stadium and the bridge, and they look desolate and they got their signs, and it's unfortunate. And I've never really given money to those people, but it is unfortunate. I did not feel uncomfortable walking past them, but obviously the missus, not the most comfortable around that situation, but I felt like it was lit enough. I felt like there was enough police presence, but is it enough to make people outside of Detroit comfortable? Maybe that's it. Maybe they just got to take people on these tours, show people what it's like to come to Detroit at night. And I'm sure they do that, but I'm certain that maybe they're getting lip service where people will tell the Detroit Sports Commission everything's great, but then when they sit down in their meetings, they go, it's not good enough. And right now, the proof is in the pudding. Right now, the results are not there for big marquee events to come to Detroit, but it's still a work in progress. I do think that the work being done by the commissions, by people that are tasked with promoting Detroit are doing a good job. Is Detroit back? Not fully. But is it as bad as it was maybe 10 years ago or even as bad as 5 years ago? No. I think downtown is revitalized. There's a lot of business. The District Detroit is doing a great job. I just think that right now we do need somebody, and I can relate to this personally on a personal level, being that I'm a podcast. I'm not a radio station. I'm not the ticket. I'm constantly battling those that perceive us as just outsiders. And so what you need is somebody to take a chance, somebody to say, hey, like Michigan State University, someone like Oakland University that says, hey, come in, be part of the media, cover us, no problem. We constantly need the big dogs like Michigan State, the Lions, Pistons, Red Wings to invite us, to allow us to come cover them. Because I'm not as good looking as Tori Petrie, and so they don't want me to host a podcast for the Lions. They want Tori to do it. But it still warms my heart that there's a podcast at the Detroit Lions website. I can understand that where you need someone else to validate you, and that's what Detroit needs. Detroit needs some love from the national elite, and hopefully we get it. And for me, that's what I'm working towards here at the network is I'm not trying to wait. I'm trying to kick the damn door down, and that's hopefully what you all sense is that, hey, this is an outsider that's doing some great things here, recording every single day, talking about the fun stuff, and bringing quality entertainment to the masses. But that's where it's at. Detroit's got to do a better job. They got to bring in some marquee events to town. They got to do it. They cannot continue to get rejected like this. And I hope they continue to get bids. And I hope that in the future they do end up getting big events in Detroit because that will help the District Detroit. It'll help downtown. It'll help pump money into the city. And so that brings us to the end of this edition of the Motor City Sports Rant. Hoping Jason comes back next week. You can find the various podcasts, who hosts each show when, on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. Thank you, everybody, for your continued support. I greatly appreciate it. You can follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. You can message anytime. If you've heard anything that you disagree with, agree with, if you want to be critical, if you want to give compliments, we read it all and we're greatly appreciative. Thank you for finding the network. You can find us on Podomatic, Stitcher, iTunes. We stream every single show 24/7 on our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. So until you hear me again, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you guys and I look forward to the response. Talk soon.
Okay, nice idiot. F you. Bye-bye.
Good day, sir. I said good day.
All right. Take care now. Bye-bye then.
Loser.